Greetings, beloved. Thank you for joining us today. Have you ever wondered why so many women are not equipped for marriage? It's because being a woman does not make you a bride, no more than being a woman makes you a mother. As with so many things in life, there's a process that leads us to our desired end. If your desired end is to be a bride according to biblical standards, then you have tuned in at the perfect time. Chapter 2 of the book of Titus tells us that the aged women should take the younger women through the process of becoming not just brides for a day, but brides for a lifetime. So stay tuned for more of Bridesmaid with me, your host, Renee Bolden. Greetings, everyone. As I stated earlier, I was looking forward to seeing you all, and now I am looking forward to hearing from you all. Kind of going with our previous patterns, we're going to start this discussion off with somewhat of a recap and a little bit of detail, I guess, about last week's discussion, where we talked about perspective and whether or not we see things as being mistreated or being trusted. I think some really good points came out. A lot to reflect on, especially when we just kind of look over our life. If you've, lived at least 2 decades, then you've been through something at some point. You've had some experiences where maybe you did feel like you were being mistreated. And as the sister who sent in the question, as she described it, she was currently in the situation where she was feeling that way, and she did respond to the message. I actually just sent her a link to our discussion with the answer in it, and she was extremely grateful, and she just kind of went on to lay out some of the things that she got out of the discussion. She was very, very grateful for the answers, because she received more than one answer to, just kind of how to move forward. And I am going to open this up for us to just go ahead and begin. Are you all prepared already? Is anyone who's ready to get started? Okay, Lori, thank you.
Is that okay? I got a lot out of this message, and I'm not currently married, but I have a boss right now. And the Lord was bringing some things back to my remembrance about the experience I've had with bosses in the past, and then now how it's different from what I'm experiencing now, and how my mindset has not been pleasing to the Lord. I think it was like 20 years ago, I had this memory that the Lord brought to me of I was at this job for 7 years, and it was we should not have been getting paid for what we were doing. We were taking ice cream orders, eating ice cream all day, and just like sitting around, that type of thing. And there was this one memory I have of, I had just come back from lunch, and I had magazines on my desk, and I was painting my toenails, and I had my foot up on the desk painting my toenails, and my boss, I felt like his presence behind me, and I looked up, and he was like silently laughing at me, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Lori, someday you're gonna have a real boss." And we just laughed, and he just walked on, and today is that day. I have a real boss now, who she's a boss, and it took me some getting used to. So I've been at this job a year and a half. The first half of that time, I had another boss who was kind of like the boss I had just was describing. He had given me his desk. I was in his office. It was one of the best offices in the facility. So he gave me his big desk, and he had this little tiny desk in the corner and that type of thing. And so he had left, and then I didn't have a boss for a while. And I was like, I have nothing to do. And I was trying to find things to do around the facility. And so then I got my new boss. And the first experience I had with her, she said, I had told her, you can have the big desk because that's, for you. And the next day she come to me and she said, my question to you is, why are you giving me my desk? And so I was like, oh. So I saw, right away, like I've been like very self-entitled. So I've had a lot of things stripped from me and on the job that were just things that made me comfortable, like a printer, a computer, things like that. And then even now, I appreciate water because they're rationing my water because now I'm in an office alone without a boss, without the assistant warden. So I have to go to the warehouse and ask for water. And it actually reminded me of the children of Israel in the wilderness, like wanting, like, Lord, where's the water? Because you can't just bring, water freely into the facility. You have to bring it in unopened bottles, and I drink so much water. So anyway, it's just one of those things where I'm seeing like she's not catering to me, and people there aren't catering to me. Like I've been catered to my whole life, like by bosses, teachers, parents, and so I'm grateful for this experience now, and I thought I was doing okay with it, but then just the preaching we've received and just the messages, the bridesmaid messages, how I'm seeing like mindsets still that are not pleasing to the Lord, like thinking it's unfair, thinking certain things are unfair, and just like what Apostle Bolden was talking about last night with us about how we shouldn't see anything as unfair. Um, And also, um, when you were talking about how you were overwhelmed, you were only overwhelmed with changing when you were trying to hold on to your old ways. I'm having to continually remind myself of that because sometimes I do feel overwhelmed, and maybe I've not dealt with things in the past that have been brought to me like correction in the past. So now I'm like, I have all these things stacked. Like I have to change all these things. And so I'm just keeping that in mind, just making sure that I really do want to let go of my old ways and not continue holding on to those things. And like you had said, you stopped feeling overwhelmed when you let go of the old ways. Um, and also the proofreading, I thought was being proofread, but then when you asked the question, I'm like, oh, I don't even go to the I don't go to Sister Bolden or Apostle Bolden about most of the time about after a message and just say, well, how do you see me in this? But I know remember specific times in the past where one of you expounded on the message pertaining to me, and I was like, I didn't even see half the stuff. It was kind of scared me. Like I didn't even see until I heard it and accepted it. Then the Lord showed me, like, so we do need to be proofread for sure. And that was all I had to share.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I want to just ask, kind of, just for a little bit of response here from anybody. Name one food or something, and Lori, since you have the mic, you can just say it in the mic. Some food that you tried it, you do not like it, and you just never ever have to eat it ever again in life. Even if you didn't necessarily have a bad experience with it, it's just not something that necessarily appeals to your taste buds. Just say it out loud. Olives, mushrooms, avocado, oatmeal, liver. Okay. And I just want to use this as an example, kind of going back to what she said about, me saying I was overwhelmed with changing when I was trying to hold on to my old ways. As easy as it is to never eat olives and mushrooms and liver and avocado, oatmeal and all those things that you name, that's the way we have to learn to look at those things that we need to let go of. That you know what, I don't ever have to have this in my life ever again. Why it's now you think about the foods. Maybe some of it made you gag a little bit. Maybe you can't stand the texture. You can't stand the sight of it. Maybe the presentation of it, whatever. Maybe you don't like the taste. But imagine what that thing that the Lord has been trying to change in you. Imagine what kind of effect it's had in your life. Think about that. And that's the way we need to respond to those things. When we talk about, as women, I think most of us can go back in time and see where we've been contentious, where we've been argumentative, where we have been malicious, where we have just been downright evil, where we have entertained evil thoughts, where we have been high minded, we've been full of pride, we have been against authority, we have done all these things that are detrimental to us just simply being godly women, being in our nature, all these things that are detrimental to us. That's the way we need to see it. You need to see it the way you see that particular food, that you don't ever want to have anything to do with it. You don't ever have to eat it for the rest of your life. And that's the way we need to see that. That's the type of response we need to have to that. You have been malice, anger, jealousy, contention, pride, all these things. You've put a bad taste in my mouth. And I tell you, if we will learn to see it that way, if we will learn to despise the effects that it's had on us, if we will learn to despise what we're passing down to our children, if we will learn to see it the way the Lord see it, then we can turn away from it just as easily. But too often, I think we as women have this, we have a way about ourselves. We we tap into witchcraft even when we don't really realize it. We may not even know the term, but we tap into it with, the way we see it play out with children. Oh, they start to catch on. I cry, I throw a tantrum, I get my way. Okay, this is the way to go. And that's what we do. So we'll raise up and we'll raise our voices and we'll get super emotional and we'll cry on a dime and we will go exaggerate a situation to no end that really doesn't have to be exaggerated to the point that we take it to, because we it puts us in control of that moment. Oh, okay, the last time I got super emotional, the only thing he did was spoke in a manly voice. He didn't even raise his voice. He didn't yell. He just spoke manly. And when I cried and I broke down and I told him how hurt I was and I told him how I couldn't handle it because when I was growing up, I didn't hear anybody speak to me that way. And I just, I just feel like he doesn't care about me, and it feels like you don't love me, and if I feel rejected and all of these things. And oh, and I feel frightened because you felt scary in that moment. All these things, we will take it to the extreme. And then we'll back that man down. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, I was just trying to be a man in my home, but she's talking about all these things, and have him trying to go back and minister to you about your childhood and how you can come out of things that happened when you were a child and things that happened with your parents. And then, we, like I said, as women, have the capacity to tap into that witchcraft and just keep that going. Okay, I'll just cry every time I hear something I don't like. I'll cry every time I hear something about myself, and I can be as wrong as I want to be. Maybe I raised my voice, maybe I disrespected him, maybe I got way out of the way, maybe I, talked down to him, maybe I thought little of his idea, maybe I didn't support him like I should have, but some kind of way can find a way to turn that around as if we've been victimized in a situation. And for one moment, we feel like, okay, I got control. But if we will learn to see those things the way the Lord sees it, have a disdain for pride the way you have for olives and for oatmeal and for avocado and for liver. have a disdain for that. Tell yourself, you know what? I don't need this for the rest of my life. And I promise you, it's just like I said, when we are not pulling from what looks like a benefit from something, we're not trying to hold on to it. But if I think one time I use that to get my way, then that makes it difficult to let it go. Because I'm not seeing it as something that's destroying me. I'm not seeing it as something that's destroying the next generation. I'm not seeing it as something that's destroying my marriage. I don't see it as something that's destroying my life. All I see is for one moment, I got my way. But imagine, is anybody in here or anybody's child allergic to anything? I mean, to the point that maybe a throat swell up or got a rash or hives or something like that. So we have one hand. Imagine two hands. So imagine, if whoever you're referring to, yourself or a child, if you consumed whatever that thing is that will cause your throat to swell up and restrict your breathing, or maybe cause you to break out in hives and you're itching all over and things like that. Imagine just voluntarily going through that. Would you? No, of course not. So why do we voluntarily destroy our lives and our marriages and our families and generations to come? Because we refuse to let go of that thing that we are truly allergic to, that it's not good for our nature as a woman. So let's not hold on to those things. I mean, what she said just kind of sparked that comment, but I want to give some others a chance to kind of talk and speak a little bit about whatever you may have gotten out of it. But please hold on to that. Keep that in mind. We have all types of reaction to things that we don't like. And so you don't take something that you're allergic to and say, "Oh, but it tastes so good, so I'm gonna eat it, and I'm just gonna deal with the fact that I might kill myself, that I might not be able to breathe. My throat is gonna close up." We don't do that. We stay away from those things. So let's have more respect for the life that God has given us. Let's have more love and honor for the marriage that we have. Let's have more concern, if you will, for the families that we have been blessed with, that we are willing to do what it takes to change and let go of those things that have been destroying us and say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm going to let this go and not fight to hold on to it because that one time, or it may have been more than one time, but that one moment. And unfortunately for us, while the next person is getting ready, you can just kind of raise your hand and grab the mic. Unfortunately for us as women, we can treat a moment like it is a lifetime. And we can be deceived into thinking, oh, you know what, Monday on January 10th, 2024 at 2 p.m., I got my way in this situation. And we'll treat that like everything went well for the entire year, and we miss things. Is what I'm saying. They're only moments, and it's the enemy's job to deceive you into thinking that, oh, this works. All I have to do is institute these emotions at the right time, and I get my way. But it's a deception, because you're really just destroying what the Lord has blessed you with. And the enemy knows that. And he'll get you to thinking again that a moment is a lifetime. And the whole time you're tearing down your house, you're tearing up your marriage, and you're tearing up the things that you might actually love, you might actually enjoy it. But the but the one moment that you choose yourself over everything else, you're just chipping away at it, destroying it little by little. And a lot of women today, un- unfortunately, and then I guess fortunate in a way, because it exposes what's out there. Social media, people obviously don't mind putting their thoughts and perspectives, their ideas, their opinions out on social media, and it exposes just how deceived women really are. To love a man, to love having a family, to love children, but then to destroy it every chance you get because you're putting yourself above them. And that's what happens. So when you're focused on a moment that looks like victory to you, you don't see the destruction that lies, you don't see the demolition. You don't see that that's what's actually happening. All you see is what looks like a victory, but it's a false victory. Why? Because too many other people are suffering at your hands for you enjoying that moment where you thought you got your way. And so let's not do that. Is the next person ready? You can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I first wanted to say that I was just reminded as I think maybe when you started talking about when we were first started talking last week and we were talking about having this mindset of mistreatment. I did not think that I had that kind of mindset, that I thought like, oh, this, whatever circumstance is mistreatment. And then I think as I started thinking about it, I don't know if it was the same day or just kind of going through the week, I was like, I never called this mistreatment, but the way I respond to things and the way like my mind paints the picture of things to me equated to me feeling like in my heart, oh, I think I'm being mistreated, even though I had never used that, never even equated that term to it before, if that makes sense. And I was like, that is quite interesting, but also makes more sense when I look back at how I was responding to things just as I was faced with different situations or scenarios. It just was kind of amazing to me to kind of have that perspective shift to be able to see it for what it was. Cause I would like before hearing that, I would not have thought that I thought I was being mistreated in any kind of way. But I could just, like I said, just looking back could tell like, oh wait, that's what I really felt in my heart. Like this is mistreatment. This is unjust. Or, however I was thinking about it at the time. So I just wanted to say that even just that and having the comparison helped me to even be able to see how my mindset was wrong in different situations. Um, Another thing that I wanted to share too was that when I was on the way here, listening to it this morning, I also, as you were asking us last week to raise our hand for the different situations, it was one work situation you mentioned. I think it was maybe I don't know if it was the uneven workload or like you getting more work like from somebody else past you or something. And at the time I remember thinking, I was like, I knew I wouldn't necessarily like it, but that happens to me all the time. So I'm not, I'm used to it. But when I was on the way here, I was like, oh, I said, Lord, please forgive me because I should have raised my hand. I was reminded how just several months ago, earlier this year, that was happening to me on a weekly basis. And I was like, okay, um, what is happening? Because every time I think I'm finished my work, because someone else didn't finish their work, I'm getting more work added on, and it is super frustrating. And so I had forgot about that, and I was like, see, that's you look. I guess I was just grateful to the Lord to help me to be able to connect that, so I could be honest. I guess I just wanted to share that, just kind of like going along with what you were saying. That one side was the victorious side that I was looking at, like, well, this happens and I don't have a problem with it, but I was ignoring the fact that I did have a problem with it when it was happening on a regular basis every week. I was just like, hmm, what is happening? So, in any case, I just wanted to share that part also. But last week, I left here with the like grateful for the challenge, I'll say, of looking at your life from a place of you've been trusted to handle these things or go through these things versus being mistreated. And so I left thinking, all right, yes, that's good. So as the week went on, there's two scenarios that I was faced with. One of the scenarios, I'm all in my feelings. And the Lord very reminded, like I could hear your voice in my head. You can look at this as mistreatment or trust. And in my immediate response was like, no, that does not apply in this situation. I was like, no, this is not the same thing. And so as I like the conversation stuff kept going. I was just like, okay. Eventually, I just had to be like, all right, Lord. I didn't, and that, like, I'm saying that to say, just to be honest, because my thought was I had every intention on having my mindset change the way I did things. And when I was faced with it the first time, I was like, oh, this was harder than what I thought it was going to be. I thought that I was just going to be like, all right, well, you trust me, Lord, and I'm trusted. And then when I was faced with it, I was like, oh, okay, I felt so strongly about it. It was like, I felt like when I was thinking about it again this morning, I felt like the Lord was kind of helping me to see, like, how can I put it? Like, that's kind of where the thought process of being mistreated is rooted in. You feel strongly about whatever position whatever point of view or perspective you have about the situation, which is why you feel like you're being mistreated or like it's something that's unjust. But feeling strongly about it does not change the fact that you still have the option to change your mind and how you view the situation. And so I was just like, all right, Lord, you right. And from that, just from that, it made me, like, for the rest of that day and evening, probably into the next day, exactly what you just explained was some of the thoughts that I had. I was just sitting there, I'm like, this is exactly what I was gonna share what Mom was talking about. Like, it made me go back and examine how much my decisions have affected my life, my family, my husband. I was like, Lord, this is detrimental. I'm grateful and I thank you that you didn't come looking for me. You didn't come for me when I was in that moment choosing offense, because I would have been in a bad place. So I'm grateful that you didn't come get me and that you gave me the opportunity, because I think even later on, thank you, Lord, later on that night, I had woke up to use the bathroom and I was thinking about it again. Now, this is the crazy part. When I was thinking about it because it came to my mind like, oh, Lord, I didn't even ask you to forgive me. So I'm going in my thought process to ask the Lord to forgive me. But then I went all the way back down with, no, I was right. I was right. And so I was like, I saw my thought going way out and didn't have nothing to do with what happened. And I was like, okay, this don't make no sense. And so then I was like, Lord, please forgive me, because I could just see, even in just this, like, you allowing, I'll say this to happen so I could see myself better in comparison to what was being said about the mistreatment and the trust. So when I was fast forward and thinking about all of that later on, that's what I was talking about. Like, Lord, I'm glad you didn't come back and get me, because I see now how serious and how dangerous that is, even in one moment, how I made a lot of choices that my family has suffered for, because I chose in that moment to be the victim. I chose to look at the situation like, no, I'm mistreated. This is unjust. This is how, whatever other synonyms you want to use for it. I had all the excuses and all of the justifications in the world to think I was right. And in that moment, as I'm reflecting back, I was just like, Lord, I'm so grateful. Like, I'm so grateful, Lord. And I'm making a choice to not do that. And so I can't remember everything I was saying, but it was almost like, you know how sometimes, like, you hear something, because I was thinking about some stuff that you had shared in the past, and I was like, I remember hearing Mom saying this, and I comprehended what she said. But today I understand it personally. Like, when you see things pop up, that stuff has to be emergent and urgent to you. And that's what I felt, a sense of urgency like I had not felt before when I was in that type of situation. So fast forward, I think maybe a day or two later, something else came up. Not something that's a big deal, but depending on where your mindset is, you can make a mountain out of a molehill. And in the circumstance, I could tell there was two different routes the enemy was trying to take to make the situation seem like it's something that it wasn't. And like, this is your ticket right here. You justified. And I was like, oh no. And I just said, Lord, you trust me. That's all I said. And it was interesting because I could say that, then there wasn't any fight and I wasn't struggling on the inside with, like, trying to stuff down fight and offense. It was just like, I'm not taking that on. And so when I was on the way here and re-listening to the message from last week, and when it was over, I had this thought process of like, just this thought came to my mind, like, it's interesting because I've heard my parents say over the years so many times, your attitude dictates how you perceive or how you experience different things. Well, however your attitude is, that's what determines how you experience life in different situations. And I thought, it's so crazy because just like Dad has told us all the time, another thing that I comprehended but didn't really understand it in real time was how flesh likes to be the victim. It enjoys being a victim. And I was like, so when you talk about mistreatment versus trust, to trust God means you leave room for God to move. You leave room for, and not on the other person's behalf, but for you to have to grow. You leave room for him to move. And I was like, that is crazy. Because otherwise, if I'm looking at my life as my whole life, everyone's unjust, I'm always the victim of everything, then you never grow. You don't rise to the challenge to change. And that's the easy route. And that's why flesh likes to be the victim, because then it's not accountable to anything. It's not having to own up to his junk. It's not having to change. You just get to excuse yourself to be the same person day after day, year after year, and doing the same stuff over and over again. But if you choose to say, Lord, I trust you, or you trust me, that means I have to trust you to give me the grace to get through the situation, to give me the grace to have favor in a feeling seemingly unfavorable situation, so I learn and I grow. And so I was just super grateful, like, thank you, Lord. And I am definitely going to, like, my perspective on my life is different. And I'm just grateful, and I just want to share
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to just comment very quickly before the next person here. Just two things I wanted to highlight that she said that I was going to bring out. One is, how do you know what you really believe is kind of the sum of what she was saying. Like she thought that wasn't a struggle for her. And oftentimes, and and I'll challenge you, oftentimes when we come together, and this is what I had to learn to do years ago, when I hear something in the message that's being preached, a sermon that's being preached, or even in fellowship during discussions, if I hear it, I always say to myself, because I'm praying and I'm asking the Lord, help me to see myself, help me to see how this applies to me, because I know I don't always see it all right away, Lord. Let somebody say something that I can connect to. Let somebody say something that, I need to hold on to, whatever, explain. Sometimes the sermon will be going on and I might hear something and I'll be like, Lord, just show me what I need to see about myself. And then he'll have Apostle Bolden come and with this whole explanation later on, and okay, this is how this connects to me. So we have to always have this mindset that, and here's what I've learned to say. If I was present in this moment and the Lord felt the need to have it spoken, whoever it's been spoken through, then that means it's for me. My job is to pursue how. So we don't sit in a spiritual setting where we're supposed to be receiving the word and then judge ourselves and say, "Oh, that's not for me. Oh, I'm good in that area. Now I've already grown in that area." That's what we don't want to do. The things that stand out to you that make you say that's the area that you need it in. I can promise you that's and if it's every single thing, then it's just every single thing. But thank God, that that's a true thing. And she was just saying that, she thought, but as we've spoken it in so many different ways, don't go with whether or not you've thought of it before, because we're not going to think of everything. We're not going to think of everything, but look at how you respond to it. Look at your response in the situation. That's how we can gauge what we really believe. Um, how are we responding to situations, how are we responding to what we're hearing? You know, look at that. Forget about whether or not you've ever thought it, whether or not you've ever saw it or anything like that. Just pay close attention to that. And the other thing that I want to say about the declarations, because I said before, you know, if you make a declaration that you're going to live for the Lord, that the devil is coming to challenge you. And what she brought up, I was going to bring this up, and she kind of mentioned it, that it's not just the devil that's going to come to challenge you, but also the Lord is going to let you have this heightened awareness for you to be able to recognize situations that you didn't recognize in the past. Oh, like you said, oh, this is what I heard in Bridesmaids. This is a situation that is very specific to what I heard. So how do I respond? Am I going to apply what I heard, or am I going to abandon it? And so the Lord, if you're sincere and you say, okay, I'm taking this word, I'm gonna apply it, I'm gonna look for it, the Lord will, that's what the Lord will do. He will make you so alert. He will, hey, here it is. Here's your opportunity to grow. Here's your chance. This is the situation that you heard about. He will allow us to see ourselves, and then still in all of that, it's up to us to respond appropriately, which is why we need to make sure we're holding on to these things. Okay, so you're ready to comment?
Yes, pretty much everything that you just said, you just hit the nail on the head, as well as Sister Smedley. I feel like I'm at that heightened awareness point where, so I'll go to Bridesmaids and I'm like, oh yeah, that was good, that was for me. And then that moment comes where I have to like do what I heard and apply it, and I'll fail it. And I keep failing that moment. And I'll choose myself instead of like applying it. So now I feel I prayed the prayer like, God, like show me like when I'm doing wrong, show me like how it's affecting, and I see how it's affecting, and I'll know when it's that moment, and I'll even hear your voice in my head. I'll hear Apostle Bolden's voice in my head. And so now I'm just at the point where I just need to do it. And kind of like when Sister Smelly was saying, like, wait, but this is different. This doesn't apply. And the Lord is just like, yep, this is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. In those hard moments, not choosing yourself. And a big reminder for me is like freedom. Like I'll look at him and I'll be like, okay, yeah, no, I don't want to like mess him up. Like I don't want to have that affect him. So he's a big reminder of that too, to kind of like stop me in my tracks. And yeah, now that I have that like um awareness, now I just need to do it. I need to really change my mindset, um, change my ways of thinking that I've been thinking my whole life, and like the stuff that we were talking about on the discussion last night too. Like, there's no, you can't really be mistreated if you don't see it like that. And I was thinking about like Jesus and him suffering and stuff. And like, who am I? I'm just like a puny little ant compared to like Jesus and stuff. So yeah, everything that was said, you just hit the nail on the head. Now it's just a matter of making up my mind and just doing it.
Hmm. So let me ask you this. If you are able to, if you can think of one or two or three mindsets that you've had your whole life that tends to get in the way in those moments, some mindsets. I'm just wondering if you can think of something that you might share, because other people may have those same types of mindsets or thoughts that they might need to overcome.
I think few situations, because I can think of a few situations that when you talk about it out loud, it is absolutely ridiculous. Pretty much just doing things my own way. Like this is the way that I've been doing it. Like something as simple as like a hairstyle.
Hmm.
Like my husband, like let's say I just like washed my hair and I did it like the way that I wanted to. And he's like, actually, I want you to wait here like this. And I'm like, but I already did it like this. And this is the way, because I do it like this, and these are the reasons why I do it like this. And he's like, I don't care what your reasons are. I want it like this because you look cute like this. And then it becomes this whole ridiculous like argument over hair. And it's like, the devil gotcha. Should have just shut up and did what you were told, and there wouldn't have been any problem. That's just one little puny situation I can think of, but the root is like, no, it's selfishness, basically. This is the way that I've done it, and I want to do it like this.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good example because it highlights a very deep issue. It goes beyond selfishness. It is a wife not holding her husband in high regard like she should, a wife not being able to really live as a wife where her joy and contentment and fulfillment comes from bringing joy to him. Now that's what we were born in that place. And you see it play out with children and their parents. That's their authority. They seek to please their parents all the time. I want your approval. I want you to be pleased with me. And we see it. And what happens is, goes back to the transfer of authority. We're supposed to remain at home pleasing our authority, and then those parents, father, transfers that authority over to the husband, and we just transfer that over to the husband. Now I want to please you. Now I love you. Now I hold you in high regard. I respect you. And that's missing. And so that's what you see. And I think about this age-old discovery, if you will, that men discovered years and years and years ago, that women dress up and look good for other women, not for men. Do you all understand what I mean by that? Because I see some confused looks. If we know, and this is a very carnal and worldly mindset, and I know that it's still in the body of Christ and in congregations. If we know that we are going around other women, we are going around competition. So what do? We go the extra mile. I'm going to spend extra time in my hair. I'm going to spend extra time laying my clothes out. I'm going to spend extra time just making myself look as good as I can look. Why? Because there's competition. We do it. We've done it for years. Women are still doing it. We put all this emphasis on trying to get the approval of the sisterhood. How many people in here are going to compliment me today on my hair, on my clothes, on these new shoes that I hope somebody noticed them, because I spent a little extra on it that I really couldn't afford, but I like them so much. I hope somebody else likes them. We as women have practiced for decades upon decades, and even to this day, getting dressed for other women. And we're missing the point. Why? Because the sisterhood is not taking care of us. The sisterhood is not saying I do for life. The sisterhood is not building a legacy with us. But somehow, and do you know what happens? More often than that, too often, what happens is that transfer of authority is broken when that female, that woman, that young woman gets from under her parents' authority and she experiences this independence before she gets married. So now you've been put in a position where you're trying to look good for the women in society. You're trying to be accepted by them when that was never ever supposed to be the case. We were never supposed to have that experience where we were depending on the sisterhood to try to give us an identity. That was always supposed to go from the parents to the husband, always. And so then what happens? Exactly what she describes. If somebody that we esteem as high. We look up to them, we think whatever, they've captured our attention. Another woman, from a woman to a woman, and I don't mean in a derogatory way. And they say, "Oh, this hairstyle is beautiful on you. This looks really good." Or we're in an arena where there are lots of women and 10, 15 people compliment us. We are going to stick to that hairstyle. We're going to try to find the clothes that look very much like whatever dress or blouse we were wearing. If they say, "Oh, that's a really good color on you," we're going to make sure we have plenty of that in the closet. We are going to follow exactly what they say. And then unfortunately for us, we've not learned to be connected to our husbands in that way. Where what you say matter. What you pour into me matters. You are reforming my identity with your words and with your love, with your compassion, with your correction. You are doing that for me now. And it's unfortunate that we can still be married, we can be in marriage and still allowing the sisterhood to dictate to us who we are. And we're stripping our husbands of that right and that honor and that privilege that he has. And we're more bonded with some woman somewhere or women somewhere than we are with the one that we vow to spend the rest of our lives with. And so that's where, you can say, "Oh, but I've already done this way. I like my hair the way it is. Why?" And I can just about guarantee you that if a woman can go against her husband about a hairstyle, somewhere along the line in your past, I can just about guarantee you, go back in your past and somebody that you held in high esteem either wore that hairstyle or they complimented you on that hairstyle, or you saw somebody that you esteemed in some high way. Maybe you thought they were beautiful and they wore that hairstyle and you decided that that's the hairstyle that you wanted because you were connecting yourself to that beauty, so to speak. It's not just, this is just what I want in this moment. It's connected to something else because that's the way we are. That's our makeup. We were not designed to just be isolated and independent and on our own and just coming up with all of these things. It's going to be connected to somebody. And so we have to realize that, again, from the beginning of time, it was intended that we would be connected to our authority. And when we get married, that becomes our husband. And so that is another thing that we really need to give really, really close attention to. I'm glad that you gave that particular example and those particular words. When he says, "I want you to do your hair this way. I like that." Now, to me, for a man to even pay attention and to be able to tell you that, that's a big deal. Let me just tell you, that's a big deal. It is, because a lot of times men aren't paying attention to things like that. It's like they know what turns their head. They know, like, okay, I can walk in a room and it's like, "Oh, yeah, I like that." A lot of times they're not going to really say anything about it. So you just kind of left to hope you see that initial reaction, catch it, when they see it, or, something like that. Because a lot of times they're just, their minds are just other places, and they're not like women. They don't pay attention to those types of things like women do. They know what they like. And so I think, I think that's something that you could actually appreciate. This, I like the way you look when you wear your hair like X, Y, Z. And me personally, this is just me, and I hope every wife will kind of take this on. There are plenty of hairstyles and outfits that I've worn that I particularly did not feel comfortable in. But because I allowed my husband's reaction to it and his taste and his pleasure to be above what I felt comfortable in, then I found comfort in it. Because my thing was like, well, As long as he likes it, I'm okay with that. I don't care what everybody else thinks. That doesn't matter to me. You might not like it, but if he likes it, I'm fine with that. You know, and we have to put ourselves in that place to be okay, to be content, to be fulfilled. That's a choice we make. There's not one single thing my husband could do or say that would make me be connected and grounded in him. What he does is he reinforces that. I have to first make the connect. I have to make the choice to be connected. I have to make the choice to be into him, in other words. And then he continues to say things over the years that reinforces that. But he could compliment me from here to eternity. He could tell me how much he loves me from here until eternity. If I have not chosen to be into him and to be connected to him, it's not going to mean anything. It will fall on deaf ears. It will never strengthen our bond. It will never strengthen our love. It will never strengthen our friendship. So that's the first thing. You have to make the choice to be there and be connected and get in that place where, you know what you're saying matters more to me than what the sisterhood has to say. Because that's what it boils down to. Either we're still connected to our parents and we shouldn't be if we're married, or we're connected to the sisterhood and we shouldn't be. That connection, that bond, we should be anchored in our husbands, so that's where our fulfillment comes from, and that's where we can feel just as proud to wear a hairstyle that he likes as we feel to clean a house that he's going to live in, or to cook a meal and watch him enjoy it, or to just take really good care of his children, and know how that makes him feel. It goes right back to getting pleasure out of seeing somebody else get pleasure from your actions. I'm gonna say this while the next person is getting ready. You can grab the mic for the next person. Um, we we really, really, as women, we have to let go of, I guess ultimately it's the sisterhood, but just this mindset that we don't mind doing things for other people who, let me see, how can I say this? For instance, like, I'm not living with you all. We're not spending time together every day, and I think somebody said it. This idea of being able to, oh yeah, I'm okay with this for a moment, but now if I have to do this every day, no, we have to get rid of that. And if we want people to be pleased with what it is we're presenting to them, do you know that's something that should be across the board? If that's if you want to know if you're genuine and sincere about it, the level of effort that I put forth to do something for Sister Pujo is going to be the same for Sister Thomas. It's going to be the same for Sister Smedley. It's going to be the same for Sister De La Cruz. It's going to be the same for Sister Gideon. Going to be the same for Sister Sarah. It's going to be the same if that's just who I am. Now, if I'm pretending and I'm trying to impress people, it's going to change. It's going to fluctuate. It's not going to be the same across the board, and it certainly is not going to be the same with our husbands. Why? Because you're common. You've already said I do. I got you locked in for life, so I don't have to impress you. That's really the attitude behind it, and that's what we don't want to do. I think it's important for us as representatives, as the body of Christ, that whatever we present and to whomever we're presenting it to, that we should be trying to present the best in all situations, not dumbing it down, not, okay, well, I'm not going to put as much effort, 'cause, I mean, you know how raggedy I am, so you know not to expect much, but over here I want to try to impress you. No, you just be the best version of yourself, the godliest version of yourself, kind of like what was said in the message last night about, we were talking about the workplace, but it's something that you can extend in all arenas. If what you're doing, you're presenting it to the Lord. If you're standing if the Lord says, wear your hair like this, are you going to tell him, no, I've already done my hair? No, I'm not changing at all. Do you know what all I went through to do this? Do you know how long it takes me to do X, Y, Z? We're not going to respond to the Lord like, not if we have any kind of reverence, not if we really, hold him in high regard. And if we're responding to each other and to everyone, to our husbands, if we're responding to everyone as if we're responding to the Lord, then I tell you what, I think we probably have some adjustments to make with our attitudes. And that's a real true challenge that we should kind of take in our everyday life. Like really challenge ourselves. Ooh, would I have responded to the Lord like that if that was him standing in front of me? would would I if the Lord was standing here with me, he'd know my thoughts. Would I be entertaining this thought? So that's something that we can definitely hold on to, that will allow us to truly examine ourselves the way we need to be examined as situations occur and interactions with other people occur. Is the next person ready? Turn the mic on. The mic. Mm-hmm.
Um, Marcy shared about the her having that mindset like this doesn't apply to that situation, to this situation, and also the basically like she believing that she had accepted it and then when she was presenting with it like it was harder than what it was. And I was just grateful she shared that to see like that I wasn't, I guess, by myself and experiencing those things, and to know that it really is like just a battle. Like it's not necessarily just um me just rejecting things or like I'm still the same person. It's just that I have to make my mind in those situations. And so just to see that is like I said, really just a battle and something that I have to make up my mind to do. And I know one of the main things for me from the message to take is the basically doing things with the right attitude, like what was talked about. Not just passing the test, but having the right attitude about it as well. And also just seeing things differently, choosing to see things differently. And I know that was one thing that I saw. Like I had made up my mind about a particular situation that I was like, I just decided to see it. And I was like, this is the way I'm going to see it from now on. Um, but then like what modesty was sharing when I was faced with it, it was harder. And then I know I have to do better with going back and actually reading my notes and meditating on the word because I was kind of focused on that. Because I think one other thing we talked about that I had focused on in the beginning or at the end of the week slash beginning of the next week, I think, um, was the or I know that same day for sure was the basically I'm not responsible for whatever somebody's doing in a situation. I'm only responsible for my actions and basically asking the question, is the Lord pleased with my response? So that was one that was good for me to think on and just something that I need to make sure that I'm keeping on my mind and not reverting back, but just choosing to actually hang on to those changed mindsets and not going back when I'm feeling frustrated or something like that. And also this it had helped me, the discussion from last week, it helped me because I was really like, I think I was just kind of talking to the Lord. I don't know about or asking a question like, how is it possible to like not ever, ever, ever murmur and complain? Like I really wasn't seeing how that was possible. Like I know things bother people. There's gotta be stuff that come up. How is it possible to just like not ever, ever, ever murmur and complain about something? But after the discussion, I saw how it was possible. Like you basically just change your mind and have a different viewpoint, and the situations that you shared just showed me like how possible that was. Like the one with the job, like you can see it as being overworked or see it as being trusted. And I just like I was sharing with Sister T on our way after we left last week. I was like, I never would have thought about that. I don't even think I would have even thought to have Like, I just never would have thought to go on that, to see it in that manner. But like I said, it helped me with that question I had about the murmuring and complaining, because that definitely cancels that out. Um, and also too with that, just kind of the same thing, just what was said, that just having a mind like the Lord is trusting me to basically grow in his situation and build character, and not um, getting bitter at different things or anything like that, but just seeing it as a situation to grow, and that the Lord is trusting me. I think that's all I was going to share.
Okay, before I comment, let me just ask a really quick question. You said you were sharing in a conversation that you never thought it was possible to think that way about something or see it that way.
Oh, the example you gave about um you can see yourself as being overworked or see it as being trusted. And I was just saying, like, I never would have come to basically, like, I wouldn't have thought to, I guess, have a mind to, like, it would have been more the mind, like what you say, like, okay, I have to deal with this, but I wouldn't have thought to even have a mind like, oh, this can be seen in a different manner. I don't think
Okay,
apply to really everything.
thank you. And I'm glad you ended with that last comment that you made about I have to deal with this, because that was something that I definitely wanted to highlight from the discussion, because I think several people may have walked away with that same sentiment. Oh, well, I guess I just have to deal with this now. Obviously, that's a negative undertone to that. It also screams, I'm not really receiving what you say. I have no intention on changing my mind. I'm just going to see how I can get through um, situation to situation by just being quiet and not saying anything. Okay, well, I guess if this is the life I have to live, then all right. In other words, what you're saying is I'm being mistreated, and you're just telling me that I have to take it, but I'm still going to call it mistreatment. That's what that attitude is. So if you're in a situation, you just, well, I guess I just have to deal with this. You're not seeing it the way that you're supposed to see it. That's not a changed mind, which means your experience is not going to change. And you're pretty much making yourself a victim of whatever the belief system is that you feel like is being forced on you. That's not the way we live as born again believers. As born again believers, we come before the Lord and we say, hey, Lord, I need you, period. Again, we have a whole lifetime before the Lord outside of Christ, however long that lifetime was, that proves to us that we've had the wrong mindset, because we've had so many wrong outcomes. So many wrong outcomes. And so then when we come before the Lord, we don't come before the Lord and say, okay, well, I guess if this is what you say is going to work out, I'll accept this, because I don't want it to be said that I'm the one rejecting the word. I don't want it to be said that I'm just shaking my fist at you. So, okay, Lord. That's not accepting the word. You're not going to experience any kind of change with that type of attitude. If, oh, I guess I just have to deal with it. That is not at all what I was saying last week. That was far from the message that I was sending. What I simply laid out, and this is for anybody who may have heard that and walked away from that with that type of sentiment. I simply laid out some real life experiences that I had. And at the end of it, the bottom line is I had a choice about how I chose to look at it. And we all have a choice in the matter. Continue being a victim, continue being miserable, or be trusted and grow and enjoy your life. But it's your choice. But just know that being quiet in a situation when you really have something on the inside of you, that's something that came up last night also. That that you being quiet about it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't make you any less of whatever is stirred up on the inside of you. The idea is to get rid of it altogether. And so we don't say, okay, and I think that was something that I wanted to address, that Sister Tia said, okay, I should have just kept my mouth shut and just did what I was told to do. No, the idea is to think highly enough of your husband that you want to please him. That's the mindset to get to, not let me just shut up and get in the kitchen in the bedroom. 'Cause that's all I'm here for. That's what the attitude is behind a lot, behind a lot of that negativity and that fight and the war that we bring in those situations with our thought patterns and our attitude. If I'm looking to please you, then I'm looking to please you. But if I have to pretend, then it's just a matter of another situation coming up, and I'll just be displaying the same thing over and over again. And so I have to deal with it is not a change of mind. The question is, what am I really dealing with? And we can choose. Our attitude dictates the experience, plain and simple. If I'm being mistreated, then I'm going to have a bad experience. And if I'm being trusted, then I'm going to have a good experience. Why? Because that's going to build me up. The other thing I thought was really, really interesting is the next person can get ready to grab the mic. It's a really, really interesting thought pattern. This idea is what she said was, how is it possible to never, ever murmur and complain again? And I thought about that just a little bit on a broader scale of how people get locked into this idea of not being able to live life without sinning. It just simply happens one moment in one situation at a time where you make a choice not to. I'm just choosing to be grateful. I'm choosing not to see this in a negative way, and that's how it happens. I'm choosing to obey the word and not abandon it, so I can be obedient in this. And we don't have to. It's all still a matter of choice. And we live life one moment in one situation, that we don't have our whole life set before us and saying just live it all and do it all right in one moment. No, it's one moment in one situation, one interaction, one conversation at a time. And each time is an opportunity for us to choose to do it God's way. And that's how we don't have to sin. And that's how we don't have to murmur and complain. That's how we can do it exactly the way God wants us to do it. When we're not justified, when we haven't already made up our minds that it can't be done. And I think this is something that has come out before. It's pretty arrogant, and I'm saying it's pretty arrogant and pretty proud. It's a proud thought pattern to think that if you haven't seen it in your life, that it just simply can't be done. How many people in the world? Like 7 billion people in the world, and one person is saying, how is this possible? I mean, if I can't do this, how is this possible? And there's so many of us. I mean, she's saying it from the standpoint of murmuring and complaining. Somebody else might be thinking about it from the standpoint of just being contentious and talking back all the time. Somebody else might be saying it from the standpoint of being overly emotional and using witchcraft. There's so many different arenas that we can say, how is it possible not to ever do this again in life? I'll tell you how. By the power of God. We sing that song and we say that God is all powerful, but then when it comes to us having to lean and depend on the power of God to help us through things, we make excuses and we won't do it. And we say, oh, this is impossible. No, God, you're more powerful than everything else except this in my life, in my situation, in me. And so we have to make sure that we are allowing God to be God, that we are allowing his power to show up in our lives and not make excuses for what we have justified, and not make excuses for the things that we have allowed, and just say, you know what? This is a moment, this is a situation, this is a conversation where I can make a choice, and I'm choosing to do it God's way. Okay, is the next person ready? Okay.
So it was like mentioned not too long ago, like how you can be in a situation where your husband is like reshaping, like you're being reshaped, basically your identity and stuff. And I've been noticing that, just pertaining to last week, because I just had that, like, yeah, to me, it's like a stronghold, like when you feel like you have to be a victim to male authority. And so my husband was asking me like what I got from the message, and so I was telling him, the different scenarios. And then, I told him how I was like, I remember being like, basically with the guy who I was saying, the guy had my husband's name. They both have the same first name. So this was the guy who I get really, I guess I had basically got with when I wasn't supposed to. And so I told him, there were times where this guy, people would tell me things like he's I guess, I'll say it in, I guess, a good PG way, womanizer, but, the other one, the WH, whatever, whatever one you want to. But, they would say stuff like that. They would say, oh, he's dirty, or he's this, he's that. And I told my husband, I didn't care, because I just was that much into him, and I wasn't listening to nobody, I just wanted to hold hands and be with him, and that was that. And I wanted to do whatever he wanted me to do, and that was even going against my parents' wishes, at the time, taking risk. And I told him, I want to be that way, for him, for my husband. And I was like, that's where I would want to be if any situation. And which the extreme was with how you explain about picking the woman up and him being found being intimate with the lady and stuff. And even, just knowing the kind of quote unquote reputation this 18-year-old had, and I was 15, I just didn't care. And, I was just like, that's how I want to be now again. And so this week, that pretty much, like, there were scenarios that happened that I guess I would have, I guess, in the past, like, just been like, okay, well, you don't have to say it that way. Or, I would just pretty much be like, well, all right, I'm gonna do it, but not with a good attitude. It wouldn't be considering my response, and what the Lord thinks about it. And so I really took that from the message that we're going to give an account for the response and how we react to situations. And there were situations where, like, I would just kind of be common, but then I would be like, wait, the Lord wouldn't. So I would like correct myself and be like one scenario, I said, my husband was telling me, he said something about like putting the dryer on the timer or something like that. So I went inside, and normally I would just be like, well, I got stuff going on, so let me do what I want to do first, and then do what he wants. But I was like, you know what? Let me put this timer on, because I know how I would do in the past. I would pretty much be like, okay, I'm going to do that, and then I'll go do something else and completely forget. So, I just went and put my timer on my phone, and, I went by that time and stuff, and my husband was like, like, you took kind of long and stuff, like, basically, what took you so long? And I was like, well, I did put my timer on and stuff like that, but I think it was like right before that, he was like, basically, did you hear what I said? And I was like, yeah. But then I was like, well, yes, I heard you. Like, and I was like, you know what? No, I need to be as unto the Lord. That's what came to my mind. I was like, you know what? Yeah, so I need to make sure that I'm keeping that in mind, just even responding. to my husband. But just different things I noticed throughout the week. He was pretty much calling me up, with, just with being corrected and, just letting me know what he may expect when he's not home. And so, just putting those things into place, I just could see at different times where I'm like, this is slack. And, like we would be talking and I would just, confess to him, I can do better in this area. Just being just vulnerable, because before I'd be like, okay, I gotta act like I got it all together, because I just being prideful, really, not accepting, where I am and things like that, and not willing to accept that, okay, I, really need to be led, and so yeah, this week, I could see, just areas that in the past I would just be defensive and be like, okay, well, no, you said it this way or you expected it that way, and that's just basically, it would be like that attitude of this is just too much. But now I see, okay, I can't have that self entitlement where I think that, when a boss or, just my husband, period, expects something that, that I'm not, basically, like, I don't have to hold them in high regard. Now I realize, that matters to the Lord, and I can't, keep going on thinking, well, no, this is just too much, or either I know I can't do that, I'll just do it this way because it's easier, but instead, just being willing to, basically, how I would say it, see things the way the Lord, sees it, hate it the way the Lord hates it, and really have enough reverence to do things the way my husband want me to do it, instead of, okay, well, this is just too much, or, I'm not willing to go that extra mile. And now I was just like, if I want to be how I was, willing to do anything, then I was just like, I realized I have to start in the everyday things, like what he's calling me up to. Be willing to be called up to the challenge and not be self-entitled about it. Like, well, that's, basically like saying that's too much and things like that. And the other thing was just even just reacting, with other people, not just my husband, like this week I had a situation where I saw my response was, I got angry inside, and I was just like, felt like, I don't know, it didn't feel good, but I was just like, you know what? I was just like, I took a step back, and I was just like, okay, I see what's there, and I remembered what was said in a Sunday message, about just practicing being a peacemaker and not creating war. And I could feel that pull to do that in the situation. And I was just like, basically surprised, like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe I've just felt that way, because it had been a while, and so after a while, I started to notice, like, I was responding to the children, like, in a way that was not nice. And I was just like, wait a minute. I was just like, I reap what I sow. This is not, I'm not going to make them pay. So I took a deep breath and I was just like, you know what, if the Lord allowed this, then I'm just going to pray about it. And I know, my response inside wasn't right, but I just thought, I'm not going to make them pay. And so after that, I took a deep breath and I was just like, you know what, Lord, maybe somewhere along the line I did this to someone, or whatever the case may be. I was like, but I'm not about to sit here and stew in this what I just felt, this anger rise up. So, like after that, I felt better, but I just realized, like, okay, wow, this is something that, you know, I guess like basically in the past just felt justified, like, well, this is not fair. And then, but then I was like, okay, wait, we just talked about this, about stuff being fair. And that's what made me step back and be like, wait a minute, I don't even have a right to act this way. And that's when I started realizing, okay, I reap what I sow. I'm not even going to, be walking around here stomping my feet angry, yelling at the children. And I was like, no, I was like, I'm not doing that. That's throwing a temper tantrum. And so, I was just grateful that the situation happened because, it just helped me to know that, okay, I need to do better on my end. I really do. And not be always wanting to think that, oh, it's the other person and be self-entitled about it. Like, okay, well, I got to get my way in this. So how can I, like you said, do the witchcraft maneuver my way? But then I was like, no, I can't do that anymore. So, yeah, I was really grateful for the message from last week and also just this past Sunday, it all went together and just how the Lord's been really helping me to see myself like and where I really am versus pretending.
Okay, thank you. And would you go ahead and pass the mic to the next person? I'm just going to just say this little bit as you're passing the mic. You know what? Just kind of highlight what she said about she's dating this one guy and she's all into him, and then she gets married, and everything feels too hard. And just a reminder, we have to go back to this idea that dating ruins us for marriage. It just simply takes away what we're supposed to be bringing into marriage, and there's really no comparison. It's not just a matter of the focus being on, well, let me get back to that mindset. The only way to really change is to change your mindset. That means you have to change the way you see marriage. And here's the bottom line. The truth of the matter is dating around, that's just for immature people. That's for people who are not ready to grow up. When you get into marriage, you're responsible for more than just pleasing your flesh. You're responsible for more than yourself. And that's just something that we just have to accept. That's what comes with it. When we get married, we're saying, I am taking on the responsibility for building up this marriage, for building a family, for taking care of children. That all goes with it. And there is no being overwhelmed. Again, this goes back to some of the earlier discussions. God built you for that. You have everything in you to be who you need to be and not be overwhelmed. But again, as we started out, if you're trying to hold on to something old that you benefited from, then you're not going to change. You'll never learn to love it if you're always loving the way you were with this guy. I was this way. And then I want you to think about it. And this is on a personal perspective for you in those two situations. That God didn't do anything for you. Nothing. You did not benefit at all from that. You got nothing out of it. There's no return on that. What, you disobeyed your parents, you snuck around, you it was just, there was nothing good that came out of it. And so again, this goes back to us being able to did you name a food? I don't remember you naming a food earlier. Beets. See it as beets. That's what that has to become to you. And what's your favorite food? Or one of your favorites? Yeah, because I know you can have an array of them. Grilled ribs, okay, and that's what your marriage is to you. You know, that's the way you have to see the difference between beets and grilled ribs. It's a matter of attitude. So okay, you can go ahead.
Hello. Okay. I really appreciated the examples and um, just the situations from your past that you shared with us, and basically those real life scenarios that happen. Like, like how you were saying, these are actually things that happen. And it was something in particular that really stood out to me was when you said that you are very glad that um, in the situation you had the opportunity to change your mindset then versus not ever learning the lesson before. I may not be quoting it exactly how you said it, but basically before getting out of the situation. And when that was said, it just really struck me like, hey, Lord, there's something here. I know that you want me to get out of this. And I just thought back on my past and situations because a lot of the things that you shared, they didn't happen exactly how they happened, but there were some similar situations. And just for example, you using the getting, spat on. And although I never got spat on, I remember having a drink thrown in my face, and I thought that was the end of the world. And it was like, okay, yeah, you are not getting any forgiveness for this. And then it was, just different situations, like similar to with other women and being around those women and different things like that. And I would just remember thinking, like, in every situation I was in that was similar, and I was like, Lord, I know that you are really showing me myself in this, not only from the past, but from now and how it relates now. But I remember being in those situations, and um, it's very similar to what we were talking about last night as well, and with the bitterness and how I just chose not to accept it in the moment. And it caused a lot of turmoil, caused a lot of problems in our marriage, of course, and other relationships as well, just with other people. So one of the things I thought about was I just really thought really deep on this because I knew that, okay, Lord, I've had a lot of similar situations, and I know that it's something that you really, really want me to see in this because I didn't have the same outcome that you had in those situations. And one of the things I thought about was how we talked about being a victim. And it's very similar to what Sister Smitley was sharing earlier about when you have this mind where you're a victim, you talk yourself out of everything because, oh, woe is me, I'm hurt, I went through this. So it's basically like an excuse to get out of putting your all in a situation. And so coupling that with moving forward and saying, okay, I'll let it go, I'll forgive, when truly I wasn't because of my attitude in the situation. I still had this watchful eye. And I remember just changing. Um, what thought left me? I remember just having like this mindset of I just knew that I wasn't the same anymore as far as putting my all in, and I know that that's what was going on. I was allowed. That's what it was. Thank you, Lord. So I was allowing myself to be a victim in that situation. So what happened there is a lot of the times, if you go through a lot of the situations like what I went through in my past, which we've shared before, I got a lot of sympathy from people, especially women and even men. And a lot of people told me, okay, yeah, if I was in that situation, I would have been done. I don't even know why you still there. Certain things that I would hear. So because you hear things like that, you can develop this mindset that because you're still there, you're doing something. Really, you're not doing it. It's actually worse. But I developed the mindset that I was actually doing something because I'm still here. And so all of these years I'm going being the victim. Fast forward, we come to this ministry, and so sharing this part is really just an eye opener for me. So when we came here and I heard so much about wives, submit yourselves unto your husband, wives, and you hear about not being a victim, and you hear about how you're supposed to be as a wife. And I remember just after a while, because when I was really excited to get here, but I just remember after a while, it would bother me to start hearing those things, and I didn't know what was the problem at the time. But now looking back at it, when you come from a situation where you created yourself to be a victim, everybody looks at you as the victim. Everybody's patting you on your back, and you kind of looking in the situation like, well, okay, well, I'm here. But then you get challenged to where the Lord is, okay, you're saved as well. This is not just about you coming here, your husband getting saved, y'all marriage, okay, it's gonna get better now. And it's like, okay, you're in the equation as well. So you have to grow spiritually as well. You can't just sit back and be raggedy. Like, what did you expect? So it was like, to me, I saw a lot of the Lord really just exposing things in my life. And I got to a place where I don't know, like I don't know what other way to say it other than I just enjoyed being there. This became my new comfort zone. I don't want to put my all in, because when I had this mindset that, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that, when you feel a certain way about somebody, you just automatically put that on them. Like, I remember, I'm just use this as an example, just to explain what I'm talking about. I remember when people would say things about my husband in the past, I could not fathom that thought. I'm like, that, of course, having an immature mind, and we talked about this before too, that, these little love stories, these fairy tale things, but it's like, we are in love. This will never happen. He'll never do this to me. Like, I remember, like, I would defend. Like, nobody couldn't say anything bad about him. Like, you was gonna get it if you said something bad about him to me and about our relationship. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna hang around you anymore because you just wishing bad on us and all of these different, like, just had this mindset. And of course, when all of that happened, it was like, okay, all of that went out the window. So it was like, I go from being this person to where I'm willing to do anything. I'm putting my all in it. And I mean, literally I would have done anything, and go to a situation to where, just over the years, I just saw these things decline. And I also saw other things like I wanted to talk about too, when you were speaking with Sister Dela Cruz, and she was sharing some things about, like, just like what could be a simple argument between her and her husband. And you were talking about, like, the honor and things that you have for your husband and just your mindset. So I noticed that I went from having this mindset of wanting to be pleasing to him to doing it for other people. So my new thing is I'm going to start seeking all of this attention from anybody. And that was another thing that stood out to me when you were just talking about that as well. And I didn't think about that during the last discussion, but when that was said, I was like, oh, I can see even further now that that's what that was. So I was doing certain things where I was seeking approval in my meals and changing things with how he may like this a particular way, but then I'm changing up a recipe. Certain things with how I carried myself, just certain things that I know that he likes it this way, but I'm doing something else because I'm seeking approval from somewhere else, if that makes sense. So I no longer had that honor and reverence there that I had for him. So it just, okay, I'm seeking out to please myself. I'm seeking out to get all this attention from other people. And the focus went from off of him. So again, that's what I was talking about it. Just, it really made things worse. And when you said that in the discussion about um, thanking the Lord that you had the opportunity then in that moment, I was like, that was supposed to be my opportunity. I could have had a way better testimony than what we talked about, last night with Job. It would have went on all these extra chapters had I just accepted it then, in the first chapter, when that drink was thrown, when that, those situations came up with the adultery, when all of these different things happened. And, I could have had that testimony then, and it would have been a way different outcome. Now I had more things to get over. Now I had more things to confront. And, of course, it's been so much that the Lord has exposed. But I really, really, what I really wanted, to get out of it was not to get out of it. What I really wanted to, just really, really expound on was just how I noticed that victim mindset that I developed. And that's something that you really have to be purposeful. Like, you better be giving, you have to be like sincere about living for the Lord and wanting to please the Lord and, please your husband and all of these different things, because I realized that was a devil that had a grip on me. And even to this day, I have to be purposeful, because I'll feel myself honestly in situations, something's happening, and I'll feel that devil wanting to come back. And I'm like, Lord, no, I cannot. I don't want to use like this, like how you were just speaking about earlier, like this victim's mindset to try to get my way to make him pull back, because he would do that in the past. And I think it was because also the things that we went through. And he told me that before. Like he said, it's it's certain things in our past that I did to you that I am regretful. Like he was saying, there are certain things that I've done to you that if a man did to my daughter, I probably hurt that man, and things like that. And I remember him saying that to me, it did something, for me. And when he, not to say that I was looking for that, he just said it to me out of the blue because I think he understood that you're still dealing with some stuff and you need to let this go. I'm no longer the same. I no longer, I had things going on. I was dealing with stuff too, just like you had to be delivered from things I had to. And, it was just certain things that he shared with me from the past that, and it was like, even hearing those things, it helped me. But I know that it was like certain times where situations would arise. And it don't have anything to do with certain things we went through in the past. It could just be something simple like what was being brought up with the situation with Dela Cruz. Something's coming up and you have this comfort where you just you want your way in something. And I could feel that wanting to rise up. And it's like, just a situation I regret that I ever allowed myself to get into and then to stay there for years and to know that now this is something that, I purposely have to be watchful for because it was something that I dealt with on an extreme level. So I was really grateful that all of these things came out and also just exposed what was there in my heart and to know that it's not about doing all of these things, but making sure that my mindset, my attitude is right behind these things because I know that there's sometimes that it's just not, I'm just doing it because I know that I'm supposed to. And of course, I don't want to be like I've actually confessed this to my husband, so I just confess it out loud now. So my husband, there's times I've done things just because I didn't want to be called out or something that's bad, like, oh, you being, Sister Jones over there, she ain't doing what she's supposed to do, like, just certain things like that. I didn't want that to be the case, like, and I know that's sad, but I that was certain things that happened in my heart, and I'm like, okay, I didn't do. It's still like what I was sharing, doing things to please other people, and that cannot be my mindset. I don't ever want to do in any moment like where I'm doing something to not look a certain way or whatever the case may be, but doing it to make sure I'm being pleasing unto him. And so that was what I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that so much. We had someone else that was ready to comment.
So, one of the things that really stood out to me from the discussion last week was basically seeing things impure where there's no impurities.
Mm.
Stood out to me a lot because I know that's something that I've dealt with so much, thinking that I know intentions of people or just trying to judge different situations, but from a impure standpoint in my own mind. And it really stood out to me, the story you told about the supervisor that, for instance, she would keep you from going to your lunch break. But we don't know basically that maybe she had more work that she needed to do, and so she needed your help. And so that's why, like, not knowing from her end the reason why she was doing things, but just seeing, well, she has a bad intention, she's doing this on purpose. And that made me think about just how things can really look a certain way. And it made me think about a conversation I had with my brother recently, my older brother. And he had brought up this situation that happened like several years ago. And he was talking about how basically there was a situation that happened where he'd come to visit, because we didn't see him very often. He'd come to visit my family. And there were some things that were said that he was not okay with, and he left angry. He got in his car and he sped off. Like, it sounded like he had his foot to all the way down on the gas. Like, it was like he just tore out of the driveway and left, like, driving like a crazy person. And so, well, I mean, that's what I thought happened, but that's not actually what happened. So I found out that, I mean, he did leave angry and he did kind of speed out the driveway. But what really happened was that the muffler just happened to pop off the car in that very moment. And he said, so it sounded like he floored it all the way home. And also, I didn't know, that he had drove a little ways off and then he'd stopped and he had went and he said he cried out to the Lord and the Lord calmed him down and sent him home. So I thought all these years that he left driving like a crazy person. I was so worried. What if he doesn't make it home okay? What if he crashes? Only to find out years later, like, the whole situation didn't go the way I thought it went. So just thinking about how, like, there's been so many times where things have looked a certain way, but it wasn't that way. And just knowing that that's something that I need to focus on. Like another thing that was said of like, stop trying to judge situations and just see how can I be a help, and just focusing on my response in the situation instead of focusing on the other people. That's what I want to share.
Okay, thank you. Is the next person ready?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I was really grateful for everything that you had said last week. I know something that has stood out to me was, I think Sister Jones just said it, like when you're in the situation to make sure that you go through it the way that you're supposed to. And I just know that whatever you were saying last week was really a blessing to me. And that now that I'm no longer in the situation, I have a mindset change, especially what Sister Smiley was sharing. I really felt convicted in my heart because I was not looking at it like the Lord was trusting me to do the right thing in the situation. And so I intend on, well, I've already changed my heart about it, and I just really look forward to, getting another opportunity to change that. And I just been learning a lot about myself and the limits. I think you said that too, that whenever you have those limitations, you have a limit, there's pride there. And so you can't really look at you being mistreated when you're walking in humility. I think that was something else that I was blessed by. And so that's what I got out of it.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that stood out to me was like the different perspectives and how like people have different experiences and that creates different perspectives and just thinking over my life, been like very rigid in how I see things. And so I could just, you could just be casually having a conversation with somebody and you um, say something to them and then they, I guess, respond to what you're saying and they say something that's very, very different from how you were thinking about it. And I used to, I guess, not like that. I used to not appreciate that and I just wanted, I guess, just what I thought to be, I guess, just people's thoughts to line up with how I thought. I guess, like, maybe that's where I was, like, subconsciously. Um, but that's something that I know that, like, I'm not gonna grow if I keep that, keep that type of mentality. And so that's one of the things that I really want to change and grow in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That made me think about, before we bring this to a close, it made me think about something that I shared early on in one of the first few bridesmaids about one of my cousins that I went to high school with, and she, made this statement to me that the world would be a perfect place, or it would be okay if everybody just thought the way I thought. If everybody think like me, we'd all get along, you know. And I can remember when I think I was 14 at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, that's probably not a good way to think. I don't think we all need to be robots, thinking very precisely the way you thought. I knew that there was something, off with that then, that, we have to be able to just learn to, like I said, appreciate broader perspectives than our own. We obviously don't have the final thought on anything. It really goes to the Lord. What the word has to have final authority, but in that, being able to again look at our lives. It's so important to be able to say, you know what, I think I've made enough mistakes. I've done enough things wrong. I've gotten it wrong enough to at least be open to hear what somebody else has to say about a situation, and allow the Lord to open up my understanding. So this one thing, we've talked about this whole thing of, am I being mistreated or am I being trusted in a situation that's ultimately going to lead to my growth? And I just want to share this. If we don't let go of this mindset that we're being mistreated, I'm going to refer back to maybe a summary of some things from some messages that Apostle Bolden preached about, like not taking yourself out of the game, God not being able to use a discouraged servant. And I'm sure there were some more. Those are two that just come to mind. But if we do not let go of the idea that we're being mistreated, and if we don't take on another mindset, a different mindset, a godly mindset, a mind of thanksgiving and things like that, we are going to end up, I guess, ultimately, if you look at it from a sports perspective, being on the bench. We're going to be injured and on reserve. When I looked up the definition for, well, I don't want to say I looked up the definition. When I was thinking about injuries and how it affects us. Okay, I want you to think about, all of us have we have a position, we have something that we're responsible for, we have people that we're responsible for. There are people depending on us in many different capacities, whether it's in this ministry or in our home, on our jobs, wherever we may have inserted ourselves in life. Somebody is depending on us to do something. That none of us are in this world and it's just us and we're the only ones that are affected by what we do. Somebody is depending on us in some manner, and many of us in multiple ways. So what happens if you're injured? You have the inability to operate at full capacity. So now you're on reserve. Do you know, have you ever seen somebody attempt to carry out something, whether it's play a sport or cook or do any number of things, and they're actually injured, maybe with a part of their body that they use the most? It hinders you greatly. That is what happens when we choose to go through life as a victim and seeing ourselves as being mistreated just simply because we have responsibility. Okay, we're just talking about responsibility, whether it's the responsibility to forgive somebody so that we can be forgiven, whether it's the responsibility to extend mercy because we need mercy, the responsibility to take care of natural things, whatever that might be. When we choose to hold on to this idea that because I'm not getting my way, because things aren't going the way I thought they would, because this conversation isn't going the way I thought it was, you're saying something other than what I'm saying. This is playing out in a manner in which I don't see the benefit of it. When we stick with that mindset, we incapacitate ourselves. We're not able to fully operate the way that we need to operate and be effective in the body of Christ. We can't be effective as wives. We can't be effective as mothers. We cannot be effective as godly women. We are not going to be the example that we need to be if we are injured and on reserve. And okay, so let's just say, all right, I'm injured. I got all these things from my past and I can't get over it. I refuse to get over it. You're not going to tell me that I don't deserve to sulk. You're not going to tell me that I don't deserve to be hurt. You're not going to tell me that I need to just move on and let it go. I'm going to stay right here. But how how much are you actually helping at that point? How effective can you really be when you get to that point? And so this goes right into, how we talk about service and how we need to live outside of ourselves. I want to be effective for somebody outside of myself. I want to be able to live effectively and be able to do things outside of my emotional state. Everything should not be centered on just me. So you think about, if you think about, anything about sports, and you don't have to know all the rules, but the player who's on the sideline because they're injured, they're not actually contributing anything to the actual game that's being played. And what happens if that person refuses to allow that injury to heal? What happens if when the team is playing, they're on the sidelines because they're injured, but then when they're at home, they're always doing something that's reenacting that injury. It's keeping that injury from healing. Always doing something. Let's just say it's an arm or a wrist that's sprained or something like that, but they're constantly playing a game console where they're always having to move their wrist. Or maybe always chopping something if it's, a wife in the kitchen, always chopping something, but constantly doing something that is prolonging the healing of this injury. You're not contributing like you're supposed to. And so then the question becomes this: am I satisfied with being injured and on reserve? That on reserve meaning at some point I'm going to get back in the game. At some point this injury is going to heal. But right now, you all take care of it. You fend for yourself. Husband, I'm hurt, so you make this marriage what it needs to be. Children, I'm hurt, so you're going to have to parent yourselves and get whatever you can get from daddy because I'm not present. Even whatever ministry, this ministry or whatever ministry you may be a part of, I'm injured right now. I cannot contribute to the atmosphere. I can't pray for people like I need to in my private time. I don't have a prayer life. I'm not even thoughtful. We put ourselves in a position that we are not able to contribute what we are meant to contribute if we are injured, and we're refusing to allow those injuries to heal. So yes, you can look at all the examples that I gave you, and I know there are plenty of people who's like, I would not have put up with X, Y, Z, whatever, you can fill in the blank with whatever. But then what are you going to do? I can't control what other people do. And that's something that I had to come to the realization of very, very quickly. I told the story early on in the Bridesmaids about when I moved from the little small town and moved to the city, and I had this thing, we talked about how I got to the point of how I felt the need to defend myself and things like that. And, I moved to the city, and it was like all these, it was just a completely different culture. And there were guys everywhere, and to me, the way they would, I guess you might call it catcalling, yelling across the street. And they had all these nicknames for women that I thought were just ridiculous. Like, I would never answer to anything like that, but that was their culture. And so I'm in this, and it's like, okay, I'm faced with either I, as an adult young woman in a new culture, either I'm going to spend all of my time trying to defend myself and say, hey, don't call me that, or that's not my name, or, I could do all these things and try to defend my own honor. Or, I could realize, as I had to very quickly come to realize, you can't fight City Hall. I just simply had to be who I was in the midst of a culture that did not recognize who I was. I had to know who I was. I had to know that I'm not Slim and Red and all these other names that they were calling people at the time. I mean, there were so many names that they used, and I had to also think there were some women who were responding to that. I just thought, okay, honestly, get a new vocabulary and learn how to talk to a woman. That was my thought pattern about it. But it's like, okay, I can't go through the city and train every man how to talk to a woman. So the best thing I can do is just do like my mother told me when we were children. If somebody call you out of your name, is that on your birth certificate? No. Well, don't answer to it. Period. Problem solved. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to fight everybody because they didn't call me by my name? Or do I just ignore them and go on with life and just be who I am? And so we have to realize that sometimes, we'll be put in situations and we have to determine how we respond in those situations. It would not have been very ladylike for me to feel like I have to fight for my honor and put everybody in their place and all of these different things. Okay, you are who you are. I could not control the whole city that I lived in and all the people that I encountered. That would have driven me crazy to try to control all those people. So what did I have control over? Me. And how I responded and how I saw myself. I mean, there were men who would literally cuss me out and call me every name under the sun just because I would not respond to them. And I still didn't respond. You still won't get my attention. And you certainly don't deserve it after those words, but they felt completely insulted. But I could not control all of those people. So I could say, oh, I moved to a new city and everybody was just talking bad about me and all these men were just whatever, and I could have went in the shell or I could just live life and just be me. I know that whatever this name is that you've called maybe 20 other women who responded before me, I know that's not my name, so I'm just simply not going to answer. I know that I am not what you're describing me of. You're upset because I didn't respond, and that's your prerogative, but I still don't have to respond to you, and I don't have to take that home with me. That does not become who I am. I just simply cannot control what you're doing. I can only control what I'm doing. And that is how we have to look at these situations. I didn't go through life thinking, oh, I hate the city life because people mistreated me. No, that's okay. I just had to learn that this is a different culture than what I grew up in. Where I came from, people weren't doing that. That's not the way guys approached women. That it was just different. I just had to learn that. And so we find ourselves in situations where things are different. Things look different. People act differently. But the idea is not to control everybody around you. The idea is to control how you respond. Why? So that you can be the most effective in that situation. That's the whole idea. I want to be the most effective I can be as a wife, as a mother, as a godly woman, as a employee, whatever situation I find myself in, as a student, I want to be the most effective I can be. And if my attitude is that I'm being mistreated because, again, fill in the blank, then I won't be effective because I'm going to consider myself injured. I can't do this. I'm discouraged. I can't do this. I'm just bogged down with worry. I can't do this. I can't do anything except turn the focus on me. And that's not how we want to live life. So let's not place ourselves on the injured in reserve list. You can use me later when I get over this. You'll never get over it until you choose to. That's the choice that we all have to make. How I saw those things in my past, like I said, and I'll just kind of end it with this, as the old people said, what don't kill you, it'll just make you stronger. Because I can tell you in every situation where I can point out somebody else's actions that seemed unjust, unreal, that seemed mind-boggling, that seemed just outrageous to me, I can also look at myself in that situation and see how, yeah, I could have responded to some of these things differently. Because I'll tell you, even, like when I described the situation with how my attitude was when I went to the city. Now, granted, let me tell you, it was a good thing. I needed to get to the point that I realized I can't fight City Hall and I can't change all these people. But I will tell you, I was a pretty proud and high-minded somebody. You just weren't going to talk to me any kind of, you weren't even going to approach me any kind of way. And that only goes to an extent. There was a little bit of attitude in that towards these men that, like, please. It was something that would not be godly now. And when I look back on it and I think about how some of those men responded, I just think they felt that, like, oh, you think I'm beneath you. And I did. Even if I wasn't saying it, that was the way I felt. Just simply based off of, you don't even know how to approach me. And so you already canceled yourself out, and so I'm sure. So when I look back at things like that, that's something that I would change, because there is a very respectful way to ignore something that you don't agree with. There's a very respectful way to turn somebody down without making them feel like they're less than dirt. And so when I look at all these situations, I could say all these things that somebody did, but I can also go back and look and say, you know what, I could have handled some of those situations very differently. My attitude could have been differently. I was immature in how I handled that, and so again, I put the focus on me, because why? I don't know who half of those people are. I don't know who more than half of those people are. I might have run into them again in life and didn't recognize them. But I have to look at myself in the mirror every day. I recognize who I am. I can see where I'm doing something wrong. And so again, it goes back to me. I have to put the emphasis on what I'm doing, what my attitude is. And am I going to allow these injuries to heal? Or am I just going to keep myself out and say, you know what, nobody can depend on me. Nobody can depend on my contribution. Why? Because I'm just too focused on myself. And that's what I don't want us to do. That's what and I'm going to just kind of end it with this, with, again, the emphasis being on service. Let's live life outside of ourselves. Let's not put ourselves on reserve and make everybody wait for us to heal from an injury that we refuse to let heal. We're making it a point to keep peeling that scab off and making that bleed, and we won't allow it to heal. And we're limiting what our contribution can be. Even in relationships, we're limiting ourselves when we do that. And so live life outside of yourself. Know that every day we have an opportunity to serve somebody outside of ourselves. Let's look for those opportunities. Let's take advantage of those opportunities and make sure that our love and our service extends beyond our home and the people that we feel closest to today. Let's expand that territory. If whoever you might feel close to, it's easy to do things for people that you feel close to. And we make excuses about awkwardness to not do things for people that we're not close to. And so I say, close up the gap. Close the gap on that. Get rid of the awkwardness. Strengthen relationships. Be willing to do things and not looking for anything in return. To me, that's the best attitude to have. That I will do whatever. I will go above and beyond for anybody and in any situation. Why? Because I'm doing it as unto the Lord, and I will not look for anything in return. We'll just simply allow the Lord to bless me however he sees fit to bless me in the situation, even if it's just me growing and getting out of myself, because that's a lot of what is debilitating us and keeping us from really being everything that we can be and contributing everything that we can contribute. It's us being just too into ourselves. And so let's do that, not only for us, but let's do it for somebody else. Let's make somebody else's life a little bit easier just by us having the right attitude and having a mindset and an attitude of service. that we are willing to do things for others. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for this discussion that we've had and everything that you allowed us to hear, to say, Lord God, to take in. And we just pray, Heavenly Father, that you will be with us, Lord God, not only throughout this day, but through this weekend, throughout our lives, that we will continue to have this heightened awareness of the situations that we have an opportunity to apply your word, to take on a new mindset, Lord God, to renew our minds and to just altogether change and be who you've called us to be. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.